how do you prepare to go 250 kilometers through the Sahara Desert?
You're in the desert for 9 days, and every day is roughly marathon distance, maybe just a bit short, but over the 6 days you complete the 250 kilometers. She'd been through this terrible mental and physical battle, telling us that she couldn't go on, and she couldn't. To then see her right as rain, absolutely buzzing, ready to compete. That's known as the toughest race in the world, the toughest foot race in the world. Whether it deserves that or not, I'm not going to be the judge of that, but I tell you what, it was pretty tough. If I thought 5 years ago I would see myself doing this, I'd have laughed in my face. I wouldn't have seen it. And if I'm able to say to my kids, you can do good stuff. You don't have to be the best person in the world. We've all got our foibles. We've all got our bits that people like and people don't like. But trying to just be a good example as a dad is sort of the inspiration, and I don't want to sound like a guru. I'm not any of that. It's just having that positive sort of mindset that you can just get through it. What you guys are doing is amazing. So keep doing it. If you're given ordinary people that have had extraordinary events and moments in their life, if you're giving them a platform to talk about it, keep doing it. And for both of you, I know you've both come through lots of adversity. So, fair play to you guys. If you want to do something, if you want something, go out and get it. Absolutely. Don't let that opportunity pass you by.
Welcome to the Fall and Rise podcast, a podcast about real people, real setbacks, and relentless comebacks. Today joining us is Craig McLaughlin. He's done many long-distance treks and has raised tens of thousands of pounds for Thames Hospice. Craig, can you introduce yourself for us?
Firstly, thanks for inviting me on, gents. I think this is an amazing podcast to do. And I think you summed it up there. I'm a middle-aged dad of four who just through my association with Thames Hospice, I've just done sort of 5 or 6 different treks around the world to try and raise money and raise awareness of, one, what a hospice does, and two, a local hospice here. So it's sort of exposed me to some of the harsher environments of the world.
Nice.
Epic. So, do you want to tell people what some of these treks around the world are that you've done?
Yeah, so I have had the privilege of being in the Sahara Desert twice. So first one I did a 100-kilometer walk through the desert. That was in 2019, I think. Wow. and that was amazing. My wife would call it a walking holiday, but it was a real exposure, to the harsh environment of the Sahara. But what I did, obviously doing it for fundraising, it then gave me this taste of, it's not, particularly when you get to sort of into your 40s, trying to get time away from work, family life. My wife is less inclined to let me go to Ibiza for a week. So when you say I'm fundraising and I'm going off to this exotic place, it makes it much easier. So as I said, I did the Sahara and then went off to, then COVID hit. So then I did the Thames Path, which is less exotic for fundraising. That's the 100 kilometer in, I think we did it in about 19 hours, but very flat along the Thames Path. And then when we were all able to go back out, we did, what did I do? I went to Jordan. I did a trek to Petra. So over 6 days. So I think I was about 120 kilometers through the Jordanian desert, ended up in an amazing place like Petra. I've done, then we trekked up and down the Grand Canyon in Arizona, which I actually think it's the hottest place I've ever been, hotter than the Sahara. Incredibly hot, incredibly difficult. And then I did Cambodia. So I trekked through from Siem Reap through to Angkor Wat. I'd never really done anything jungly. A lot of it had been quite desert based. So it was quite nice to do something a bit different. And then it's all culminated this year in completing the Marathon des Sables Legendary. So wow. do you want me to explain what the Marathon des Sables is for?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So that's probably the most extreme one. So that's a 250 kilometer race. It's an ultramarathon, and it's a race through the Sahara Desert. and it's a fully self-sufficient race. So you have your backpack, and in your backpack you carry everything that you need. So all of your foods, all of your mandatory safety equipment, all of your clothes, your sleeping bag and sleeping mat and whatnot. And the only thing that the race replenishes is your water, and every night they give you a tent to sleep in. And that's a shared tent with generally 7 other strangers that you meet for the first time. You're in the desert for 9 days, and every day is roughly marathon distance, maybe just a bit short, but over the 6 days you complete the 250 kilometers. And so that's known as the toughest race in the world, the toughest foot race in the world. Whether it deserves that or not, I'm not going to be the judge of that, but I tell you what, it was pretty tough. So.
Wow. And you touched on fundraising. What is your sort of reason for doing all the treks you do? Is it just purely fundraising, and why do you fundraise?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2016, 2015, my dad was diagnosed with bowel cancer, terminal bowel cancer, and he was pretty young. He was 60, I think he was 60. So, that's really young. And he was given 2 years to live, and unfortunately, he died within about 9 months. And the last 5 weeks of his life, he went into Thames Hospice. Now, I'd never encountered a hospice before. So Thames Hospice is a local hospice to our area, but I'm sure this could apply to absolutely any hospice. When I'm a young guy, hope I never have to encounter a hospice for a very long time, in the way that my dad did. But when you're in that situation and you are very, very poorly, what you want is to be treated with dignity and respect, and be an environment that, yes, it's not home, but it makes you feel comfortable. And I have to say, in the 5 weeks that my dad was in Thames Hospice, that's exactly what they did. And we all knew that what the outcome would be, and I think generally that's what hospices do. They provide palliative care. They do end of life stuff. And so when any family member goes in there, you really want that environment, because you're going to be visiting it. You want them to feel happy in that environment, knowing ultimately what the outcome's going to be. You want to visit it and feel relaxed and calm yourself. We took our children into the hospice, and they were young, to see their granddad. It was a great environment, and putting that in context, it was a nice place to visit. It didn't feel clinical. It didn't feel unwelcoming. It felt not quite a home from home, but as I said, it felt like a nice environment to spend your last days. If that's not an oxymoron. So that was in 2016. He passed away, and 5 weeks is a long time to spend in a hospice. I think the average stay is about 7 to 10 days. I always joke that as a Scotsman, he got his money's worth. But you don't pay for these things, So what Thames Hospice were doing then, they had a place in Windsor, and actually they were fundraising to build a new place. So a brand new hospice in at Bray, on a lovely setting just right on the lake.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's lovely, isn't it? It's really beautiful. And there's lots of reasons around that I'm touching on, but ultimately they were doing a public appeal because they wanted to raise £3 million for the last bit of funding they needed to build this new hospice, which gave them an increased capacity. So what it did is it allowed for, I think it was about 10 or 12 extra beds. Everything was an individual room, which when my dad was in the old hospice, he actually shared an area with 3 other patients. And actually, when the inevitable happens to someone that's in the bed across from you, it's quite stark, I would imagine. My dad was quite a quiet man, so he didn't speak too much about that sort of stuff. But I could see the impact it had when someone that he'd been in a essentially a ward with had passed away. It kind of makes it a bit harsher and a bit more aware of your own mortality at that point. So the new hospice had lots of separate rooms, new office facilities. So what they could do is consolidate all of their office staff and get them into the one building. They've got a cafe there now, which is obviously an income generator, because to run the hospice, I think they need to raise about £37,000 a day, which is huge. It's a huge amount of money. So it's an expensive sort of thing to do. To build a new hospice, it allows them to have 28 individual rooms. And from a dignity perspective, when you are in that environment, it's nice that you can have your own space, and some of the rooms open up onto Bray Lake and all this, so it's really, really pretty. So I got involved with them. I think one of my sisters, so I've got some siblings, and one of my sisters had done fundraising. She'd done like a 100-kilometer walk a couple of years before, but I'd never really thought about it. I'd never really sort of broached it. I'd always kept myself fit through football and whatnot. And so I did some corporate stuff with Thames Hospice around this Raise the Roof, and where I was working at the time, they became their charity of the year. And so we started to fundraise via that mechanism, and what that did is that sort of introduced me to a few people. And then they'd organised the initial Sahara trek, and they said, "Oh, would you, perfect timing, would you go on this Sahara trek?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, sure. I don't mind a walk." And of course, then that's when the journey starts of, okay, a little bit of training, a little bit of, I remember my first walk, I think I did 6 miles, and my feet were full of blisters, and oh my God, it was dreadful. When I think of that now, it's probably when you go for your first run, isn't it? You go, I've run a mile, before you know it, you're running 100 kilometers, you know what I mean? So, so that was really the start of the fundraising journey. And I think we raised about 8,500 on that first one. The tagline was, "Who doesn't want to see a ginger Scotsman in the desert?"
I think
How did you cope being in the desert and with the sun? Obviously, being ginger, you're sort of more prone to being burnt.
Yeah, weirdly, I think over the years, having been sunburnt so many times, you become you're very careful. But also, I'm all right in the sun. I can actually function and cope, in hot temperatures. It's just I just need to look after my skin. So always have a good hat, plenty of cream on the arms. As you know, Jonah, I'm constantly in shorts anyway. So my legs are never going to tan, but they very rarely burn. So I don't know. I guess it's just being sensible. And that was the same through all of the treks that I've done, including the MDS. Everybody was warning me about the MDS being this ridiculous temperature. We hit at points it could hit 50 degrees when you dip down into sort of any area surrounded by sand. It's a little microclimate. But yeah, generally I cope all right with the heat. I don't really mind it.
How did you find the MDS in the desert with the heat?
Yeah, so again, there's lots of scare stories around it. But for me, I think if you're just sensible and you understand, your water intake, you understand your electrolytes, and that's something that we can touch on around preparation for these sort of things. But again, yeah, just be sensible. Have a good hat, cover your neck. I tell you what I did do, which I never do. I always have my arms out, but actually I wore a long-sleeved top this time. Still shorts, but and actually a lot of your leg is covered if you got shorts on, and then I wore calf socks. So the actual area of your leg that's exposed to the sun. But in terms of the heat, just be a bit sensible about it. Know your limits. If you know the signs of being too hot, know when to take a break. But I can talk you through how the Marathon des Sables works in a bit if you like.
Yeah.
So how do you prepare to go 250 kilometers through the Sahara Desert, self-supported? Like physically, mentally, how do you prepare?
Well, one, you have to have a very honest conversation with your wife, because she has to let you do it first. So look, and I joke, this is a this is an event. In any of these sort of events, it's not just you that has to prepare; it's your family and the whole environment that you're in. So, because I've got 4 children, I've got a job, I've got a dog, I do lots of football coaching, and I somehow have to fit all of this in on top of training for this event. So, time on feet is really important. So your feet are going to be your biggest asset, and also they could be your biggest downfall if you don't understand your feet and what works with them, and you end up with terrible. I've seen some terrible blister situations. So you have to prepare your feet, and then physically. So over the years, I'd put on a couple of pounds. So the first thing, as soon as I signed up, it was get back in the gym. In fact, get in the gym. I was never really a gym goer. Joined the local gym. Over the course of the 9 months, I lost 3 stone. I didn't think I had 3 stone to lose, but clearly I did. So I managed to get myself down. I think I started at about 96 kilos, and I got myself down to about 77 for race. So it's just short of 3 stone.
Wow.
So I've actually put on, this last month, I've put on about 3 kilos since it was the 6 weeks since I've been back. As you know, Jonah, it's been my birthday and a few other birthdays, 50th birthday. So, and I didn't drink, I stopped drinking. So I stopped drinking, and I love a drink. So I stopped drinking from sort of New Year's right through to the event, which is only sort of 4.5 months. But again, interestingly, big impact on my life. I'm a binge drinker. I'm not a drinker during the week, but again, it does have a big impact on your sleep patterns and just a general well-being. So and that's another conversation. So I signed up in June last year, so straight into the gym, and I had a program set for me, so I was doing 3 or 4 days in the gym, lots of strength and conditioning. So roughly, you have to work that your backpack would weigh about 10 to 12 kilos with water. So so I instantly trained with that weight on. Everything I did, not in the gym, but everything I did externally. And then I just put a program together of walking as much as I could. So I get the benefit at the minute that I don't work. So I'm self-employed and I don't work Fridays and Mondays. So the current contract that I'm doing, so that enabled me to train like in a 4-day period. So if I wanted to go out, I could happily go out on a Friday and do 30, 40 kilometers and have the time to do it, because it didn't impact family time too much. Then on Saturdays and Sundays I coach football, so I'd have to fit something in around that. And then on Mondays again, I have the opportunity to go out. So it's just building something that fits into your life, because they do. There's a chap called Rory Coleman who looks after all of the sort of people within the UK, and he puts a training program together. But I just took that and adapted it into my lifestyle and how my family pattern works. So a lot of time on your feet, Peter, a lot of time. Get used to being on your feet for hours and hours and hours on end. And interestingly, when it's cold and it's wet and it's raining and you've got 5 layers on, and you have to go out and do like a 42-kilometer walk, and it's going to take you 10 hours, it's pretty soul destroying, because the next day you might have to do a 20-kilometer or a 30-kilometer one as well. It's difficult. So we talked a little bit about the mental side of it. So a lot of the advice that I looked at, so I did a huge amount of research online. There is so many different versions of what you should do. It does get very contradictory around what you should eat, what you should wear, what you should carry. And it's about trying to take all that information and then again adapt it to know your body, know your mind. I'm pretty lucky. I'm fairly strong of mind, but so yeah, fairly dogmatic. I've got a fairly sort of single-minded approach to some of these things, and I know we talked off camera, Peter, around that. If you've got this end goal, it's much easier to visualize. But as I said, training in the cold and it's miserable and it's wet, but you get up and you still do it. You go to the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning before work. It's dark, it's miserable. You come out, and then you've got a full day ahead. It's like you're on that hamster wheel and you've just got to get it done because the end goal is raising lots of money and doing something good, and you have to be very single-minded around that. So the race itself, I would say, 10% nutrition, 70% of it is mental, because the other 20% is the physical side. You can get your body in the right condition, but when you are hurting, when you are aching, when you are tired because you've had no sleep, the sleeping conditions at the MDS are challenging at best. You're eating food out of a bag, you're eating rehydrated food. Actually, all of that doesn't matter. It's where your head is at. Can you keep pushing yourself the next day, knowing the next day you've got to get up and compete? Knowing it's going to be hot, knowing you haven't had a shower for 6 days, knowing you've got to get up and poo in a bag in front of people effectively, all of that sort of stuff really, all of that stuff plays in your mind. You just got to get your head in the right place, and then you'll achieve anything. And I don't want to sound like a guru. I'm not into that. It's just having that positive sort of mindset that you can just get through it.
Did you
I've shocked you there, Peter, with the pooing in a bag.
Yeah, sorry, that one did catch me a little bit off guard. I'm all for mental preparation and physical preparation and going to dark places, but doing that in a bag, I didn't expect that, to be honest.
Well, so you're in the desert. You're miles from anywhere, and
so you can't just sort of kick some sand over it.
Well, you could, but imagine. So there's probably 1,000 people that are competing. So you in an array of tents. So you probably wouldn't want to be 1,000, walking around with 1,000 people pooing in the desert. So I'm sure there were a few that did it, but the sanitary part of it is really important, because the MDS has had instances of sickness bugs going round, and the last thing you want in an event is that you do not want to get a sick bug, because there were a few people that had tummy troubles that had to drop out, did not finish, so DNF'd. So you got to be really sanitary about it. But anyway, you go into a little cubicle. They're all over there's probably 3 or 4 sets of them, and it's a little Velcro screen, and you squat down and you get your poo bag out. It's like a big giant dog poo bag, and you put it around, and then you do your business, and then you tie it up and put it in the bin outside, and make sure you clean your hands. I did laugh when I've told this story. Some poor chap, I think it was like day 5 or 6. We were all knackered. We were all, just exhausted. Your mental. And he was in before me, so he came out and he tied up his poo bag, and then there's a big bin that you drop it in, and then they take it away and burn it. But he opened the bin up and put his toilet wipes into the bin and walked off with his bag of poo. So I had to shout him back and say, you need to, and they had to go in and fish his toilet wipe, his pack of toilet wipes out of the poo bin. So God love him. He was just so tired and exhausted. This was like at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's still dark and stuff. So yeah, thankfully I didn't have any of that. I did nearly fall over and into my own, but that's a different story.
You mentioned about the mental side. Did you see?
Oh gosh!
You mentioned about the mental side of it. Did you see anyone the mental side got the better of them on the course?
Yeah, it's, there's definitely a few of those, and everybody has their moments. So it's weird. With the MDS, you're in this huge bubble of 1,000 competitors, and maybe 200 or 300 strong support staff. And I would really like to touch on them. There's the orange jackets who are there for medical support, and they're the blue jackets that are there for sort of race support and organisation and stuff. And a lot of them are people that have done it before, have competed in the MDS before, so they've got lots of good race knowledge and whatnot. They are absolutely integral to this event taking place and to you getting through it, and to provide you with mental support, because they've done it. So when you hit a checkpoint and there is lots of blue jackets there helping you out, just making sure you've got your water bottles filled up. There are a couple of tents there where you can sit and chill out and all that sort of stuff. But they are there geeing you up and giving you a bit of a pep talk and saying to you, right, this stage is X long. This is the sort of terrain you're going to get. Just get yourself through this stage. Do it checkpoint by checkpoint. So that for your mental health within the race environment, they are absolutely crucial. Watching people have difficult times, you're in your own race, and there are times where you would sort of catch up with somebody, or you'd come across somebody, and you could see that they were mentally struggling, if not physically. And sometimes all you would do is just check. There was I think about 54 nationalities, but everybody has their name on their badge. So their first name on the badge on the front and the back on their number. And so it made you able to say, someone would say to me, Craig, how are you doing? You all right? Everything okay? And you'd be like, yeah, I'm still going. And then they would either stand with you walk with you, or for a conversation, and maybe you'd say to each other, let's get ourselves through the next checkpoint. Or they would just, good, keep going, and then they would head off in their race. And you would do the same to people, because I think one of the things that I wrote since I came back is, I think it's the one environment where I've ever felt in my life that everybody's got your back. Everybody there has got your back. You know that everybody is willing you to get to the finish line. Now, whether that's the next checkpoint, or whether that's the end of that stage, or whether that's getting right through to the end, everybody has that shared purpose. All of the support staff want everybody to finish, and all of the competitors want everybody else to finish and get over that line. So it's a very intense, cultish almost environment that you all have this very shared common goal, and it's very single-minded. But I have a story about a young lady that so on the long day, you do 82 and a half kilometers, I think, in the one go. And it's legendary, in terms of it's the one that can make or break you. You get to the long day, if it can make or break people. And if you get through that, you pretty much know you can get through the next couple of days. And we'd done, I think we got to checkpoint 5, and they told us that rain was forecast, which is pretty unusual, but we climate change. There's starting to get a lot more rain in the Sahara. And we got to checkpoint 5, and we got a sandstorm. And it is brutal. When that sand hits you, it hurts. It can really, in your eyes, you've got to have goggles on and whatnot. Visibility is really low. So we had a sandstorm. I tried to set out the sandstorm for about 45 minutes. And then I started to head off, and there was a group that we called ourselves the Circus. It was just a disparate group of us, and some of the young ladies didn't want to walk in the dark because you walk through the night. They didn't want to walk in the dark on their own. So we got a little group of us together, and we absolutely powered through for a couple of stages, a couple of checkpoints. But then we got hit by rain, and you've got the dust, you've got the darkness. I mean, it is pitch black, and when the sun goes down, and it goes down probably say about 6:30, 7 o'clock, it's pitch black. We had the rain, we had the wind, and the ebbing and flowing of the sandstorm. And it got a little bit cold, and it's night time, and you're tired. And one of the young ladies with us, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying, French girl, Elise, just hit the wall. And it, I can't explain. There was a group of us, and we had to send half of the group ahead to just get to the checkpoint, because there's no point in them slowing down and stopping. And I said, look, I'll stay. I think my dad instinct kicked in. And I said, look, I'm going to stay and get her through to the next checkpoint. This was between 6 and 7. And I think she'd slow down to like 2 kilometers an hour, which is, I mean, it is snail's pace in that environment. And she was struggling. She just hit whatever wall she had hit, and she couldn't turn her legs. She couldn't get going. And yeah, it wasn't nice to see. It was really unpleasant. because you can't physically do anything for them. So my decision was to stay with her and get her to the next checkpoint. But that probably tripled the time that it took me, would have taken me to get to that stage. So I was looking at some of the stats and the time it took us to do those checkpoints, and I think the checkpoint, it was roughly about 10 kilometers, and I think that probably took us about 6 hours. Which, yeah, I mean, the poor girl was in real trouble. And there's a great ending to this story. So we get to checkpoint 7, and I'm like, right, I've done my bit. I get her to a tent, and she's like, okay, and I go off, and I'm like, do you know what? I'm gonna have a sleep for an hour now. It's just that I'm not gonna hit the 24 hours that I wanted to hit in terms of doing this. So I thought I'll have a kip. So I had an hour's sleep, got up, ready to go, and I just knocked out the next 18 kilometers in a row over 2 checkpoints. I just head down and got it done. It turns out that she stopped for 20 minutes, had some food, got up, and actually finished before me. so she, but I didn't know this, and so when you get in, like, I ended up being out for 27 hours because I'd had a sleep and we'd had the delays and stuff. So I'd been out. The long day took me 27 hours. I was aiming for about 24, and then I got to the bivouac, it's called, which is the main camp. And I was really concerned. I couldn't find her. I couldn't see her. You know, there's 1,000 people there. It was hard to sort of see her. And I was saying to my tent mates, I just really hope that she got through it. But I didn't know. And then you have a rest day for the rest of that day. And then the next morning you get up and it's marathon day. So it's, 42, 44 kilometers that day. And about 100, 150 meters in, once the race had started, I saw her. And you can't imagine the elation that I had. You know, those little wins, knowing that she'd been through this terrible mental and physical battle, telling us that she couldn't go on, and she couldn't, to then see her right as rain, absolutely buzzing, ready to compete. Those moments, and it really gave me a lift as well to see her there and see that she'd been able to get through whatever adversity she had. So you do see a lot of it, though. Funny enough, on the first day, we had a couple who dropped out, who they call it DNF, did not finish, but they DNF'd because they said it wasn't what they expected. So I don't really know what they expected, but so they, different for everybody.
Well,
Wow.
I remember you saying there was a guy that had like a carrier bag doing it.
Yeah, the Irish teacher, lovely, lovely, lovely fella. But there was this rumor going around that there was a dude that had turned up completely unprepared, and he's carrying his stuff in a carrier bag. So I was, it's like anything, you hear all these, it's just a rumor. And I encountered him. I think I encountered him on marathon day, so which is near the end, and I can't remember the chap's name, but lovely, lovely fella. Sure, he was from Limerick. But he said to me, I was walking, I'd sort of caught up with him, and I didn't know who he was, and then he said, "Oh, you wouldn't just put this thing in the bag?" And because often you get people would say, "Oh, would you get that out in the back of my, get out of my pouch?" But he pointed, and it was a carrier bag. so it was a carrier. So basically, he had what I can only describe as probably like a big school rucksack. So we're all there with I don't know, what did I have? I had a ultimate direction. We all had people had the marathon, the WAA proper backpacks with the water bottles here and whatnot. I mean, he essentially had what was a big school bag and a carrier bag hanging on the inside of, just sort of between his arm and the bag, and what he'd been carrying in it was his clean underwear because his backpack was so full of food, because you have to carry, you carry it. But and again, I chatting to him, and he was saying, he didn't really know what to expect, and he'd signed up for it, and he thought it was just a long walk, and I was like, wow, But it tells you that you don't need all the gear. You just need the right mindset, because it's not a cheap event to enter. It's I think it's about €5,000. I think, to enter, and then people can spend an absolute fortune on kit. So just to see this chap just rocking up essentially and going, I'll just knock it out. I'll just get on with it. You know, it doesn't matter. I don't need all the expensive gear. It was pretty amazing. And he was really strong as well at the end. You know, he powered off from me after, he must have been bored of my conversation, so which doesn't bode well for this. So, but you did, and it was really nice. You met all sorts of personalities, all sorts of nationalities, and all different stories. Everybody's got a really interesting story as to why they're there. So,
wow. So, does someone manage to complete the Marathon des Sables with a carrier bag and a rucksack?
Yeah, absolutely. Literally the most basic of kit.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty amazing. And then there's guys, one of the oldest chap to have done it, he's actually from Windsor. I think, so a chap called Harry Hood. So I'm going to say he's 77 this year. This is his second one. Wow. And he trains at Braywick, Jonah, so gym down by me. But yeah, again, a remarkable dude. You know, I think ex-forces, but, you know, shows you again, age is absolutely no barrier to any of this. And then I won't say her name because it might be private. So I met an amazing woman, and unfortunately she didn't complete. And actually, it's a different story, but I kept encountering her along the way. But she just started running in 2020, so probably around about. She's probably a lady that's same age as me. She discovered running just pre-lockdown or pre-COVID, and then she was diagnosed with leukemia. And you know, 2 young children as well. And she got through all of her treatment, and she was, you know, very fortunate, I believe, to have survived. And she then just challenged herself, keep doing it, and very successful professionally as well. But she just kept challenging herself to do events, and like Ironman, or I'll say Iron Women is probably the right term to use, but and other ultra marathons, and she challenged herself to do the Marathon des Sables, and I spent quite a bit of time with her. And she just got really unlucky. Again, it's one of those things. She just had really, really bad blisters. She got really terrible blisters. I think she had some challenges on her footwear, and unfortunately she dropped out on the long day. But an amazing achievement for her, even to get that far in my mind. And I kept saying to her, "You're an amazing woman. I mean, what you have been able to achieve." And come through in such a short window of time. So yeah, so lots and lots of sort of amazing people, and amazing stories. You know, some far more. You know, they're the sort of people you want to be tapping into. You know, for this podcast. Yeah, really, really amazing. So yeah, so.
And what was your main takeaway, like in terms of lesson you learned, or your main moment when you look back on the Marathon des Sables?
I'm really fortunate. I've got a nice life. I've got a really, really good group of people that I can rely on in terms of friendships, and I say this to them often. I do this because I'm probably of a generation that doesn't deal with emotions very well, and so I probably never dealt with probably stuff in my past and my grief for my dad and all of that sort of stuff. And so I put a lot of my energy into fundraising because it was an avenue. And I think my biggest takeaway from doing the Marathon des Sables is that, you know, we've raised a decent amount of money for this. I think it was touching 14 grand. So we've raised over 50,000 in the 5 events that we fundraised for, and
wow.
and that, you know, the Marathon des Sables being the current pinnacle of that. As I said to you earlier, when I was in that environment, it just felt like everybody had everybody else's back to get you over the finish line, But actually, one of the things I definitely know is I had a lot of people back here that had my back. And that's really important because you come back to normal life. You leave the race environment, you leave that whole bubble, you come back here, and it's a nice thing to know that there are lots of people that care and really, really are sort of invested in your journey and your life, and are interested in the things that you are doing, just in a normal environment. The other thing I learned in the Marathon des Sables is choose good shoes. Make sure you choose good shoes.
Yeah.
Uh,
And where do you feel as if though that leaves you now? Do you feel as if though after this race you sort of closed a chapter in your life and you're going to move on, or what are your plans for the future?
it's a bit addictive. I mean, you probably know a fair bit about this, both of you. That adrenaline of sport and competing, and listen, I didn't get any sort of special time doing this. I would definitely have been in the bottom couple of hundred. But from a fundraising point of view, definitely not finished. There is definitely a huge amount more that I think we can do. I've started to lay the plans for doing something. I can't do something every year. So the next one is 2027. So I've started to look at what would be a good event, and what would people be happy to sponsor me for? Because that's ultimately, you're asking a pool of people to pay. They don't pay for the event. I always pay for the events and everything myself, but you're asking people to part with the money to support a charity that is very special to me, but hopefully they've all built a connection with it because it's local as well. But absolutely, I will be doing something else. What that entails, I've just started the conversation with my wife, Debbie, to ask her permission if I can do another one of these. Because it's, like I said to you earlier, it's a family thing, and it causes a lot of stress and pressure. But I'm just looking at Central Asia. There's a few mountain ranges and things in there. So I quite like the idea of Mongolia. There is a rat race in Mongolia, bit of wild camping for 4 nights while you do it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I've had a little look into that one.
Rat racing, got a load of good stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, people have said, "Oh, would you do the Marathon des Sables?" So one of the chaps that I was chatting to, he did it twice, and he said the first time he got his head down and just did it, and he had a horrible experience. He said the second time he got his head up and looked around, and that was the advice he gave me. And absolutely, I did it. When I stopped, I took photographs. I enjoyed the environment. I didn't just look at my feet the whole time. I wasn't desperate for a time. I was just keen to. I just wanted to finish. So I think with all of these things, if you're doing it for the reasons that I'm doing it, which aren't about racing, aren't about I've got to get a time. If it's just about taking part in the event, get your head up, have a look around, and enjoy the environment you're in. Because a lot of these things are in amazing places that you wouldn't necessarily go to on holiday. So
I suppose you're not chasing time; you're chasing a feeling.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think you and I said just off camera or whatever, Peter, as well, that I'm doing it because I know that I want to achieve something for the hospice. I've got people that have fundraised and whatnot, but personally, there is a huge amount of personal pride in doing this sort of stuff. I do. There's not many times when you're a 50-year-old man where your kids spend most of the time taking the mickey out of you. Your mates spend most of the time taking the mickey out of you. So work is work. So when you're able to achieve something and give yourself a little pat on the back and go, do you know what, I did all right there. And that's how I feel about the things that I've done. I do feel a certain amount of pride that I've been able to achieve them. I've put the effort in pre them to get myself in the right condition to do them. And there's always that next challenge, isn't there? Whatever that is, for me, it's always about enjoying the one that I've done, but I would really like to do something else.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, Craig, we asked 3 questions to each of our guests. So, our first question for you is: who inspired you?
Wow. I mean, I'm not. The obvious thing is to say my dad, but that's a bit twee, and it's probably not quite right. I mean, and again, I could say that his death inspired me, but again, that sounds a bit dark. So I'm actually. Do you know what? I think my kids are a big inspiration because you want to set a really good example, and there are not many ways that you get that opportunity. And if I'm able to say to my kids, you can do good stuff. You know, you don't have to be the best person in the world. You know, we've all got our foibles, we've all got our bits that people like and people don't like. But trying to just be a good example as a dad is sort of the inspiration. Who that is, you know, I look at some of my friends; they're great examples of being great dads. But yeah, that's probably the inspiration rather than the individual. It's that sort of element of trying to just be a good sort of inspiration for my kids rather than someone inspiring me.
Nice. The next question is, if your younger self could see you now, what would they say?
Oh God, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
I'd think, look at this fucking self-righteous prat. I was I'm not going to say I was a completely different person, but I had a completely different life. You know, if I thought 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, probably, I think they probably would have been a bit shocked that I'd been able to get my finger out and do one or two of these things. Do you know what? Actually, doing the MDS, if I thought 5 years ago, personally, if I thought 5 years ago I would see myself doing this, I'd have laughed in my face. I wouldn't have seen it. Pre-COVID, absolutely no chance. So.
And then our final question is a message for the listeners.
Oh wow, God! I mean, now you're putting me on a point of influence here, which is not great. You know me, Jonah. I'm not the most. I'm not going to give the best advice. Your mum and dad have stopped me giving advice plenty of times. Now, I think what you guys are doing is amazing. So keep doing it. If you're giving ordinary people that have had extraordinary events and moments in their life, if you're giving them a platform to talk about it, keep doing it. And for both of you, I know you've both come through lots of adversity. So fair play to you guys. The young people are, and I sound like a really old man here, but it's amazing to see some of the inspirational young people around. To the rest of your audience, keep listening, keep following these boys on their journey. And you know, the only bit of advice I've got to give people is life is not a trial run. So if you want to do something, go out and do it. You know, certainly that's how myself, my wife, and our kids live. You know, so don't mess up an opportunity. When I was backpacking years and years and years ago, I always said to myself, say yes to everything. It's a bit like the Yes Man book. Say yes to everything, every experience, every opportunity. Some of them I should have said no to on reflection. But just if you want to do something, if you want something, go out and get it. Absolutely, don't let that opportunity pass you by.
Amazing.
Thank
Amazing.
you.
I mean,
Good.
Rob,
I feel like I've talked at you for the however long we've been doing this.
no, not at all. Not at all. I mean, there's elements of what you said that I feel like now somewhat I'm going to have to look into doing MDS. Also, some elements that make me question that decision. But what would you say? What's your advice to me if I was to willing to look into doing that?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most rewarding sort of challenges I've done. So for you, I think you'd get so much out of it. But I think it would be do your research. I mean, absolutely do your research in terms of what to expect, and talk to not just me, but find people that you trust, that you know have done it. And there is a great network out there of people. And I would imagine that you know this already, but know your body, know what works and doesn't work for you. There's a lot of common sense in any of these things. You know, I met guys that, and I do want to touch on my tent mates. They're, you know, you meet these 7 or 8 people that you've never met before, and they can make or break it for you as well. So you have to give over a bit of your character and a bit of yourself, and be as open to things as possible, because you might meet people that in normal life you might not cross paths with. So I think if you were going to do this, be really open about the whole experience. You know, absolutely absorb yourself into that MDS cult for the period of time. You don't have to stay in there, but absolutely throw yourself into it wholeheartedly. Do your research, train with your kit, you know, extensively, use it, know it. And honestly, listen to the advice, because there is some great advice out there. So, do you know what? I would love to see you do it. 40th edition next year. What a great story for the podcast. What a great story for the adventure you're on now. You know, and for all of your travails, absolutely, I think this would be a great build-up for the next year as well.
Yeah, I mean, so currently I set the record for the longest distance ever ran by a British teenager. We're out in Portugal in a 29-hour run. I'm sort of looking at doing 100 miles, hopefully this month, which I'm looking to do around a track. But I mean, next year I'll be 19, and I'm sure there's many great things to come. So perhaps Marathon des Sables is one of those things that I'll look to do. But
well, there was
like
18-year-olds.
I'll do my research.
Yeah. There was 18-year-olds there this year.
Did they compete?
And they're very celebrated. Yeah, there was a lot of young guys, lots and lots of young people now there. So it's the challenge is, can you do the camping bit rather than the racing bit? You know you can do the racing bit. It's the camping bit that really can sort of sap people in having a good group of campmates. I was very lucky. I had a lot of like-minded sort of 50-somethings. We were all very, you know, from similar backgrounds as in the tent, which really helped. But that can be the real challenge, you know, when you wake up and you're covered in sand, sleeping on the floor. But
yeah, I mean, I wonder who's the youngest Brit to do Marathon des Sables. So if there's a record there in some respects, then maybe we'll have to go after that.
You've literally got me Googling it now.
Live on the podcast, Peter signs up to a 250-kilometer Sahara Desert race.
Well, so we in this local area, we could have the youngest and the oldest.
Yeah, that'd actually be pretty cool.
Oh, hang on, 16 years. It looks like
that can't be right, surely.
Oh, the challenge is there for you now, isn't it? It looks like it might be a 16-year-old, but we'll look that up.
I mean, fair play to that guy if he did that, but that is, wow. Well, we'll see. But Craig, that was last week. Sorry. Craig, thank you very much for your time.
No worries. And listen, thanks for having me on, gents.
Thank you.
Life is not a trial run. So if you want to do something, go out and do it. If I thought 5 years ago I would see myself doing this, I'd have laughed in my face. I wouldn't have seen it. That's known as the toughest race in the world, the toughest foot race in the world. Whether it deserves that or not, I'm not going to be the judge of that, but I tell you what, it was pretty fun. I've got 4 children, I've got a job, I've got a dog, I do lots of football coaching, and I somehow have to fit all of this in on top of training for this event. And if I'm able to say to my kids, you can do good stuff, you don't have to be the best person in the world, we've all got our foibles, we've all got our bits that people like and people don't like, but trying to just be a good example as a dad is sort of the inspiration. If you want to do something, if you want something, go out and get it. Absolutely, don't let that opportunity pass you by.